A couple of major Eastern Conference showdowns go down to the wire. Meanwhile, the Rangers and Devils' struggles have been the talk of the hockey world, yet they took very different paths tonight. And some good teams also played hockey as well tonight. That and more coming up on Locked On NHL.
When that final horn sounds, you know it's time for Locked On NHL Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. Prepare to experience game day reactions like never before. Only on Locked On NHL Game Night. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network around. We're thrilled to have all of you with us, wherever it is or however it is you're joining us. You can like, subscribe, and follow our shows on YouTube. The show is also available at your preferred podcasting platform. So if you're checking it out now, we certainly hope you'll check it out again in the future. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. The wild card round is here, and FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. In fact, the wild card round is over. So visit FanDuel.
It's now over, yes.
The wild card round is over. The division round is here. So visit FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your Profit Boost pack every NFL playoff game day. I'm Alex Wiederspiel. I write about hockey for Yard Barker, hosts a couple of shows here in West Virginia, home of the Nailers. And I hang here on Locked On NHL Game Night. I'm joined alongside tonight by digital sports journalist and Sirius XM host Mike Ostie. Mike, what's up, man? How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. Yes, I just watched the Pittsburgh Steelers leave the season behind and the NFL wildcard round conclude, and watch some hockey in addition to all of that, of course, and happy to be back with you here on Locked On.
Yeah, that was I had that game on in the background as well while I was watching hockey and going back and forth. It was nice in the fourth quarter that I could just focus on hockey mostly.
I sent you a text actually halfway through because I was doing both, and I had to write about the Steelers game as well. You can find one of my articles over there at Yard Barker that you mentioned. But I also texted you that, hey, I'm checking out here. So what's the lineup for tonight? Here are the games that I tuned in on.
Perfect segue too, because the lineup tonight, we've got some great games and we've got some interesting games in the first segment. But I want to start with Detroit and Carolina in what, again, could potentially be, and right now, obviously, we're still very, very early, but this could potentially be a preview. I'm not saying it will be, of the Eastern Conference Finals.
You jinxing these teams right now.
I'm just saying these are the two division leaders, and it's very plausible this could be an Eastern Conference Final. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but Detroit wins this one, a 4-3 overtime victory where they actually let a 3-0 lead slip away. Carolina scores all three of their goals in the third period, none of which came at 5-on-5. Special teams mavens in this one to carve out a point. Detroit gets the win on a controversial goal. We'll talk about that in just a moment. First, though, I want to get to our Locked On Detroit Red Wings host, Brian Fisher.
Fedorov's number 91 is forever enshrined in Hockeytown, going up to the rafters, never to be worn again. It was a fantastic night from start to finish. Obviously, great speeches from Sergei Fedorov himself, Steve Yzerman, Ken Daniels, Mickey Redmond, touching tributes, and just one heck of a show the Detroit Red Wings put on for Sergei Fedorov as his number is retired. And then the Red Wings go out there and, well, they get up to a 3-0 lead against the Carolina Hurricanes, the East-leading Carolina Hurricanes, the team that Fedorov signed that offer sheet against or with all those years ago. And it looked like the Red Wings were going to cruise to a victory in a game that they probably were being outplayed in, right? Gibson was playing fantastic as per usual. Goals from DeBrincat, James Van Riemsdyk, Albert Johansson, his first of the year. But then the third period got crazy. Detroit just turned into a shell. Carolina became the possession monster that we've seen and know throughout the season. And they battled back, and shorthanded goal and abysmal penalty called, 3-3 going to overtime. But then that abysmal penalty called came back to the Detroit Red Wings' way as Andrew Copp cross-checks his way into an OT winner. So Red Wings now tie the Carolina Hurricanes atop the Eastern Conference to cap off a wonderful retirement night for Sergei Fedorov.
All right. Much appreciated there, Brian. And yeah, huge night as always. There were some folks who weren't sure this night was ever going to come. They weren't sure what the Red Wings were waiting for. And fortunately for Detroit fans, they are able to honor Sergei Fedorov. So I'm just saying, listen, I know this, listen, Carolina's the veteran team, the experienced team. No one's going to be shocked if they get back to the Eastern Conference Finals. Detroit, even if they win the division, folks will be shocked if they find themselves in the Eastern Conference Finals. But kudos to Detroit. And I think, Mike, Brian had a great point. John Gibson has been playing a lot better lately. I actually have a number for you.
100%.
So if you go back to his first 15 games of the season, his save percentage would not have been out of place in the 1980s. It was below 870. Since then, 939 in his last 12 games. He's 10-2 for the Red Wings in that stretch.
And he had a shutout in the mix there. And Gibson playing well is very important because part of why some, you, myself, thought that this could be the year Detroit would get into the postseason and break that 9-year drought is because they finally, in the offseason, tried to do something else in net. They've not really had a legit goaltender these past 9 years. That's been part of the problem. And there hadn't been a sense of urgency to even fix that position. They were in a rebuild and they just figured, okay, we're going to keep puttering along and try to do it through the draft. They didn't buy at the deadline each of the last 2 years, even when they were in the hunt. And yet in the offseason, that guiding light sign that, okay, Yzerman realizes there's pressure now and this is supposed to be the year, they get Josh Gibson to come aboard, a veteran goaltender who's been there and done it before. It's not a Hall of Famer like when they brought in Dominik Hasek years ago to give Fedorov his third Stanley Cup, but still a solid veteran goaltender who you would imagine would be an upgrade. Unfortunately, even while the team was winning, Gibson was playing so poorly, he played himself out of the starting position and really was an afterthought. He's now fought back to be a legit netminder for this Red Wing team. Now they really have two goaltenders they can count on, and they are getting big wins. These were wins they wouldn't have had in recent years. They would have dropped these games and been close in the standings. They're getting big wins like this, a big win against an Eastern Conference leading Carolina team, big wins against Montreal, Boston. Yeah, they lost to the Penguins, but this is a Red Wing team getting big wins. I will say, though, just focusing on the game, and then I do want to make a Fedorov comment before we switch off. This is a Detroit team that had a 3-0 lead in this game, but even with that 3-0 lead and Gibson standing on his head, they are still a team that recently relies on the goaltender too much. Mm-hmm. Part of why they lost to Pittsburgh, one of those losses, Alex, they had 12 shots on net in the game. That's insane. I mean, they have Olympians. They have all-stars there. You don't have to have the Hall of Famers that Fedorov played with to get more than 12 shots in a game. And in this one, they also were losing the shots on net battle all the way through. They were getting lucky bounces and lucky calls and talents there to score those goals, and Carolina was unlucky facing a great Gibson in net. But they cannot win on a regular basis having sub-20 shot totals in games on a nightly basis here. And that's what they've been doing in recent weeks despite winning. So that needs fixed. Their offense needs fixed despite scoring goals, if that makes sense. And now they're getting goaltending, which is obviously a positive for this team as they look like they're a playoff team at minimum.
What a funny night the New Jersey Devils had, Mike. So the Devils go and play Minnesota in the Quinn Hughes Bowl. The last time these two teams played, and their only other meeting that of this season, they only played twice. The Devils got the win. At that point, the Devils were ascending. We didn't yet know that Vancouver was going to collapse the way they did, but the thought was still, look at how much this team has in front of them. They beat the Minnesota Wild. They are one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference at the time. There's still the possibility of them getting Quinn Hughes. And boy, how much has changed since before Halloween. Now Quinn Hughes plays for Minnesota. The Devil fans will have to hope that he somehow decides not to sign there. Quinn Hughes does not go there. And things have just been a disaster for the Devils since the Jack Hughes injury. They have fallen out of the playoff race. They do
9-0 to the Islanders.
Yeah. Yes. And think about this. The New York Rangers got blown out. Gave up a 10 spot the other night on Saturday, and they still weren't the lead on 32 Thoughts, the podcast. The Devils were the lead on 32 Thoughts because of the Dougie Hamilton situation. And how about this response, Mike? Dougie Hamilton is on ice for 3 Devils goals and no Wild goals tonight. He has 2 assists. Another funny one, Andre Palat, who has been much maligned by Devil fans, also scores twice in this one. And New Jersey gets the win 5-2 over Minnesota. It has been a brutal stretch for the Devils here. Any chance that this might be the mark of them turning it around in what is still a wide open Eastern Conference?
It's still wide open. Everyone's jumbled up, but the Devils got to win. They need to win. Anything's better than the recent past 2 weeks. Do I think they're a real contender, going to do anything and build off this? Not really. Minnesota, it's a bad loss, but they'll pick it up, and they're still the better team between the two of them. But yeah, the Devils have been so bad. For them to score 5 goals, let alone win, is incredible in this game, but I don't think it means much to the future. And what I do want to just hit on real fast on Fedorov, you can make an argument he's one of the more underrated two-way players in league history. And look at the accolades. He's ironically the last Red Wing to win an MVP despite all the success with that franchise. And then you also connect the dots that our Locked On host mentioned there. They did play Carolina tonight, so that connects it twice. He mentioned the offer sheet that he could have left before he eventually left to Anaheim, and that offer sheet that upset the Ilitch family, and the 3rd Stanley Cup that Fedorov was a part of, the last one he was a part of before leaving, against the Carolina Hurricanes. So I don't know if that was on purpose or by accident, but it worked out in terms of being fitting, and Fedorov getting his just due. I mean, the overall stats are not Gretzky, Lemieux, and Yzerman-like, but he's a Hall of Famer nonetheless. And he was the face of the league more so than just a Hall of Famer and great for the Red Wing. He was that marketable sensation through the 90s when we were growing up. So it's about time. And for a while, I thought maybe it would never happen based on the messiness between his exit and even the past decade plus of his relationship.
I should have known that you were going to get one more word.
I had to get that out.
Yeah,
I mean, he was a favorite player of mine growing up for sure. And he did also admit on ice that he never should have left, which, I said that as a kid. So, okay, he never should have left. But then he also threw in, I never should have left, but if I didn't leave, I wouldn't have met my wife. So then you're sitting there, well, happy you got married then, I guess. But yeah, he never won a cup again. The Red Wings did win one after him. But yeah, he got to play with Ovechkin briefly and had the, little Anaheim run. But yeah, he maybe should never have left. It'd be a what if story. What if he never left?
Yeah. 30 for 30. We'll get right on that. New Jersey gets the win. And one last one before we go to break. Florida takes down Buffalo tonight 4-3, though the 3rd goal was late in this one with 12 seconds to go when it was essentially already decided. Let's go to Armando Velez of Locked On Florida Panthers as the champs do appear to be revving that engine again.
The Florida Panthers were able to get a big win on the road in Buffalo in a swing game that only has them now 1 point out of the last playoff spot after defeating Buffalo by a final score of 4-3. And the Panthers were able to consistently get on the counterattack and continued the same momentum from the end of the Habs game, despite that being in a losing effort. And for the Panthers here, their top power play unit got in on the scoring in the first period, and that new change of putting Uvis Belinskis on that top unit continues to work. AJ Greer potting in 2 goals, continuing to build on his career high and making the Buffalo Sabres only able to get one line going on the evening. Now the Panthers even out the road trip, even out the season series against Buffalo, and now have 3 days off before they pay a visit to Carolina.
Florida is still a point, by the way, behind Buffalo, but obviously a big win to not let that one go to overtime. It was tied in the 3rd period. Florida took the lead. And so real quick note, Mike, before we go to break, just the Panthers, hard to, I can't buy them not making the playoffs. Well, I know they're not in a spot right now, but I think it's going to happen.
You can't not buy them when they are the 3-time consecutive conference champion and back-to-back cup champion with mostly the same roster, now getting healthier. When they click on the power play and Bobrovsky's at least good enough, they're tough to beat. And that Carolina matchup is going to be really one to watch because if you recall, the last time they met, Carolina ended up falling and a game they really let slip away. And that's the team they just cannot even beat in these individual games, even though they're the better team this year. Getting off the snide and getting one over Florida would be big for them, but I cannot imagine the Panthers are not in the postseason. And, Buffalo's still good. They don't have to hang their heads too much to lose to the champs, even though Florida's had this roller coaster ride of a season so far.
The banged-up Avalanche host all of a sudden red-hot Toronto team that hasn't lost in regulation since before Christmas. Plus, the Rangers are apparently out of answers. That and more coming up on Locked On NHL Game Night. Our show brought to you by our friends over at Factor. New year, big goals, and somehow even less time to cook. If you're trying to eat better but don't want to spend hours grocery shopping or meal prepping, Factor makes it easy. Now, these are fully prepared meals designed by dietitians and crafted by chefs so you can eat well without all the work. Factor meals are made with quality, functional ingredients, lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole foods, and healthy fats. No refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners, and no refined seed oils. Just real food that fits your goals, whether that's eating healthier, managing calories, or getting more protein, all of which are factors in why I have used Factor in the past. I've been using Factor, especially on busy days when I know I don't have time to cook, which is pretty much every day that I do Locked On. It's very, very important. My favorite thing is the variety, though. 100 rotating meals every week, high protein, calorie smart, Mediterranean, even some vegetarian and vegan options that you can look at. It honestly makes sticking to your goals way easier because the food is already done for you and it's still high quality. So head to factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off. Use the code LockedOnNHL50 off to get 50% off. That's right, 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL50 off. The code is LockedOnNHL50 off. Make healthy eating easy with Factor. Thanks for making Locked On NHL Game Night at least your second listen of the day. You should be listening to our Dayside show first, but thanks for joining us on the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out the new Everydayer Club. Your favorite show probably has an Everydayer Club, which includes an invite to the members-only Locked On Everyday Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of those shows. All right, let's jump back into things here. I want to start with Toronto and Colorado, which on many nights I feel like could have been the lead of the night. I digged it down into this segment just because Colorado has been a little banged up, and I mean,
Fedorov jersey and an overtime winner. I think it made sense.
But with the Avalanche a little banged up, I almost didn't feel like, I'm not taking away anything from Toronto, but I feel like we've seen what Colorado looks like at full strength. Now we're getting a look at what it looks like when they have to go through the depth a little bit. And to their credit, Toronto had really good stretches tonight where I thought they dominated. Colorado did enough to fight back and force overtime. Easton Cowan started off the scoring. Cale Makar, Brock Nelson both got goals. Brock Nelson now the Olympian with 22 goals on the season. He's having a great year. Austin Matthews scored his 22nd for Toronto. That looked like it gave Colorado the lead and might have been the backbreaker until Marty Nietzsche responded. William Nylander ultimately gets the overtime winner for Toronto in this one right after it looked like Colorado had won the game, but the puck just didn't cross the line. Let's go to David Morisuti from Locked On Toronto Maple Leafs with the first word on this one.
A big 2 points for the Leafs in Colorado. I'm David Morisuti from the Locked On Leafs podcast, and it was a dogfight until the end. But it was William Nylander who scored the overtime winner as the Toronto Maple Leafs beat the Colorado Avalanche 4-3 in overtime. And, I mean, if you're a Colorado fan, at least you get to keep that undefeated streak at home in regulation. But for the Leafs, it also maintained their undefeated streak in regulation to start 2026, an 8-0-2 run. And right now, don't look now, Leafs fans, they are now officially back in a playoff spot. They own the top wildcard spot. Obviously, that could change, give or take a few days here. But a big turnaround for the Leafs. Mike DeStefano and I will discuss all that went right for the Leafs in this edition of the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Mike, who knew that firing an assistant coach could have such an impact? Yeah, the Leafs, they haven't lost in regulation.
Coach, an assistant coach, yes.
Right. And the power play has been better as well. So they picked the right scapegoat in this case. And what's crazy is Mark Savard was like a rising star, and I still think he's going to get another job somewhere.
Sure.
But there were thoughts that this might be a future NHL head coach. This is a tough look for him right now as Toronto is streaking since he has been removed from the staff.
Yeah.
Tonight.
I mean, they're a streaky team, though, so it could dip back the other way. We have to see the finished product here. But this is a Toronto roster, we say this every year, that is too talented to not make the playoffs. And then it's really all about what they do in the playoffs. And am I predicting them to finally have a deep run? No. But there's too much talent for them not to get in. Austin Matthews picking it up on down. So for Toronto to win, build a streak, and get back in playoff contention, am I really surprised? No. Although, ironically enough, one of the first shows that I did here as a part of Locked On AHL Game Night, and even talking off the air, was about, with you, if Toronto would get back in the hunt, if they would be one of those teams that's out of the race at the time, that would get back in there with the Olympic break. And I believe you poo-pooed it a little bit. I even told you that myself and a colleague on another show were saying that Toronto would be that team. They were only 7 out at that point. And you brought up that you hammered home the 20%er. That was your stat, that if you're not in the playoff position by Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving, that you only have a 20% chance of making it, which is better than a 5 or a 6% chance. It's actually, semi-reasonable, but they have the talent to get it done. And Colorado, maybe, despite being a great team, the best team all year, certainly could lift the cup again. That's what they're playing for. They have the depth to get over having their captain out, but maybe they go from having an historically great season to just a regular great season. They're certainly fine, but in terms of setting records for wins and points, that may dissipate now that they're not fully healthy.
17 straight games since they last lost in regulation at home, but the winning streak ends at 16. So it's funny you mentioned that 20% number, because it's been, I can't wait to go back and look. I bookmarked, and I'm not going to bring it up right now because I don't want to slow down anything that we've got going on here by adding another website to my already billion tabs that are open here. But I will say I did bookmark what the standings looked like at American Thanksgiving, because I don't remember a season like this one where teams are just like, it's like stocks going up and down, man.
But this is the year to do it. If you're going to do it, it's going to be this year. Yeah.
And so that brings me to our next game, where Seattle has done this multiple times this season, where they have looked really good for stretches, and boy, have they looked really bad for stretches. Yeah. And the New York Rangers are in one of those really bad stretches right now. And listen, there are a lot of Ranger fans who are really down on this team. They got out to a 2-0 lead tonight, and John Chick of Locked On New York Rangers was not buying it. Here's him with the first word.
So the Rangers just lost again, and that is a sentence that I think all of us should probably get pretty used to hearing in the second half of the season here, as this season continues to just basically go down the toilet. But what is kind of surprising about this one is, at least for me, I had a very strange reaction when the Rangers went up 2-0 in this game. They were up 2-0, maybe like 4 minutes into the game, whatever it was. And my reaction was, they have too big of a lead too early. And I know on paper that sounds ridiculous, right? How could you be upset about them going up 2-0? And I wasn't upset about it, but I was facing just the reality of this season, which is basically that this team will find a way to lose. And they also tend to kind of take their foot off the gas once they, get a little bit of an early lead. We've seen them do that multiple times. And I don't know. I mean, the vibes are just so bad right now, and we're so used to seeing this team just play helpless, personality-less hockey, that being up 2-0 early, you kind of knew that they would take their foot off the gas and Seattle would get right back into the game. And, of course, that's what ended up happening. And they lose, because that's what they do. Going to break it down in the next episode of Locked On New York Rangers. Do not miss it.
All right, Mike,
matter of fact, gotta love it. Yeah.
Let me throw some numbers at you. So since Adam Fox and Igor Shesterkin both went down, the Rangers are 0-3-0, and they have been outscored 19-6 in those 3 games. Obviously, not very good. Let me throw this out here, though. This has been one of the
not surprising either. I don't think surprising.
No, because I mean, look at it. They were barely treading water, with their Shesterkin. 2 best players. Right? Like Shesterkin was putting up a Vezina caliber season. Fox, when healthy, was putting up a Norris caliber season, and they were still not in a playoff spot. So that should give you an indication of how this season has gone. But the craziest thing is that with how many times we have said, I think this team might be dead. And I'm not talking about the Rangers now. I'm talking about teams in the East and Western conferences where we go, man, I think this team is cooked. I think this team is cooked. They go on a long stretch where they're done. And this has happened multiple times this season. I am not ready to bury the Rangers yet. And not because they're good, but because this seems like the mushiest season of middling average NHL teams, and then a few really good ones at the top that I never remember.
Yeah, that's the issue this year. This has the most parity we've seen in a while, and maybe this is because you have the last 2 years. The Stanley Cup Final includes Edmonton and Florida. They meet back-to-back years. Florida having been there 3 years in a row. Edmonton going on deep runs year in, year out. Those two teams owning respective conferences. So just attrition would say that they're not going to be back, or that maybe they would get tripped up, even if they're back in the future, but not this coming season. And there's a lot of parity around the league. A lot of stars are spread out. A lot of stars are aging out. A lot of teams are very flawed that are normal contenders. But when you look at the Eastern Conference, for example, we talked earlier, Detroit beating Carolina in overtime. Detroit right now is a lock playoff team, but in recent years, they've had horrible springs. If they faded out, would it shock you? Maybe more this year than in recent years, but if they move from a 2 seed all the way down to 6 or 7 and barely get in, wouldn't be shocked. Carolina's right up there leading the conference. If they whittle it down, wouldn't be shocked. If the Flyers, who we'll talk about in a moment, if they bounce out, Tampa's now looking good, but the Penguins have been hot and cold and no longer are really looking hot, and people aren't buying them anymore. They are likely maybe not a playoff team, even though a week ago people thought they were going to crawl in. That could be said about every team in the conference, and same thing in the West. So with all of that said, that leaves room for a team like the Rangers that really aren't that good, and maybe it's even better for the future to not get in, that
would be better.
They could find a way to get in if, say, the Penguins would keep losing, or if the Capitals don't figure it out. They've been rough recently. They're losing games even when Ovechkin scores. If they bounce out, again, there's room. There's doors open for the Rangers to walk through those doors. Just as our Locked On host tells you, they have trouble walking through those doors and just find a way to lose games.
Even when they're wide open, they have trouble walking through those doors.
They can't even get pushed through the door, which these other teams are trying to push them through at times.
So, and I'm not saying I'm not buying them as a good team. I just, with how crazy this season has been,
bad teams will make the playoffs.
I'm not ready to write anybody off. That said, we're going to have a rapid fire third segment where we will talk a little bit about Montreal, Dallas, Tampa, and Edmonton and everything they did tonight. Dallas overcoming some adversity, Montreal with a huge third period, and Tampa, they have some serious adversity they're going to have to deal with. So will Team Canada. All of that coming up right on the other side of this break on Locked On NHL Game Night. Our show brought to you in part by our friends over at Quo. New year, new systems. This is the time when a lot of us look at the messier parts of how we run business and think there has to be a better way. And yes, actually there is. Streamlining your communications is one of the quickest upgrades you could make. That's why today's episode is brought to you by Quo, spelled Q-U-O, the smarter way to run your business communications. Now, when your team is reachable, organized, and communicating in one place, you're not just working cleaner, you're creating more opportunities to connect with customers. The whole team can call and text from Quo under one shared business number. That way nothing gets missed. Everyone sees the full conversation thread with Quo, which makes replies faster and more personal. It works right from your phone and computer, and you can even keep your existing number. Now, it's no surprise, Quo is actually the #1 rated business phone system on G2, trusted by more than 90,000 businesses, from solo operators to growing teams. Make this the year where no opportunity and no customer slips away from your business. Try Quo for free. Plus, get 20% off your first 6 months when you go to quo.com/lockedonnhl. That's QUO.com/lockedonnhl. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, Mike, a little rapid fire here. Let's start with Montreal and Vancouver tonight. This was tied at 3 going into the third period. Elias Pettersson scored his 12th of the season. Kind of a weird one. Alex Carrier, just as a footnote here, scored goals number 2 and 3 for Montreal within 20 seconds of each other in the second period. You don't see that very often, especially considering they were just his second and third goals of the season. The big story, though, the third period, Montreal blows the doors off of Vancouver, outscoring them 3-0 in the third. Goals from Mike Matheson, Juraj Slafkovsky, who had a multi-point game, and then a gorgeous I don't even know if I would call it an insurance marker. It was the cherry on top of the sundae. Oliver Kapanen off the rush with a blast, and Montreal gets the win 6-3. Listen, I have been back and forth on the Habs because it's tough to know how much of last year was real. But again, when you see guys like Noah Dobson playing this way, I think it shows the additions they made in the offseason clearly addressed some of the concerns they had about whether or not they could get back to the playoffs.
Yeah, I'm still up and down on the Habs as well. I'm not ready to slurp the Kool-Aid fully. However, they are clearly the better team in this game. We mentioned the Eastern Conference being so wide open. They're better than a lot of the teams I previously mentioned that maybe could stay in the race or be at risk of dropping out. And while they, allowed a decent amount of goals to a bad team in this game, you still have a goaltender perform. You still get offense in the game. You dominate a period. It shouldn't have been like this. It shouldn't have been a problem like this against such a just atrocious Vancouver team. 16 wins on the board right now only. They are just so bad. Give Vancouver a little bit of credit, I guess, in terms of putting an effort forth in this game and mustering up shots on net, etc. But Montreal, the better team. And yeah, I don't really buy them. But maybe that's not conventional wisdom right now on how they're performing. They're winning big games. They're beating teams they have to beat in the standings, and they're proving that they do belong.
By the way, Vancouver, real tank commanders right now, as not only did they trade Quinn Hughes, but
they belong at the bottom of the league.
Yeah, their goaltending situation is alarming with the injury situation. Thatcher Demko is, again, battling something. So
they are bad.
Yes, they are bad with very little hope of improving. Dallas and Los Angeles, the Stars had to overcome some adversity late in this one. They led 1-0 for a while. This was kind of an uneventful game, and there was a flurry of action in the back half of the third period. Quentin Byfield with a great play to tie this game at 1, and it looked like Los Angeles might rally at home where they were so good last year, and they've been so bad this year. And then Dallas looked like they took the lead. Goal gets overturned on review for offside. Jason Robertson, a few minutes later, puts it home for his 27th of the year, clearly feeling no ill effects of being left off the Olympic roster. Jason Robertson off to another fantastic season, likely going to score 40. I do wonder if he can get to 50. We'll talk about that, I'm sure, later on in the season. Matt Duchene adds an empty netter for good measure. Dallas gets the 3-1 win over Los Angeles. So the Stars had their own little rough stretch recently, but they have come out of it.
Yeah, and their offense makes them too good to have a rough stretch for too long. With Colorado now being a little vulnerable, maybe they can soar up there even more. So for Dallas to win, I'm never surprised that offsides call was a bit rough there to throw in. And for the Kings, they were contending for a while. Now Kopitar on IR, kind of ending his, farewell tour a little bit. It's not looking to be as sweet for him. We'll see when he returns. But the other end is they've lost some unlucky games recently. Lose that San Jose game in overtime. You get to this game, controversy involved. They're losing to teams that are near them in the standings or just in rough, controversial ways. They're not getting the breaks. They're an unlucky team. I don't obviously think they're going anywhere this year, but they've also been very, very unlucky as of late, and that just continued here in this one.
It's wild. When they were healthy, there was a stretch that looked like they were going to find themselves into the playoffs, and then they sort of reverted back to what we thought they would be.
And they've dealt with injuries, but they've been very unlucky too. Yes.
Yeah. Tampa Bay and Philly. This was interesting because I have not been bought on Philly all year, and finally I think they're starting to show some cracks in the armor a little bit. Now, they are still in a playoff spot. They have 52 points through, I'm doing the quick math in my head, 44 games. They're tied with Washington, who has 52 through 46. So
who's lost a lot lately as well.
They have a couple games in hand. But it's worth noting that this is a Philadelphia team that I have had concerns about all season, and they kind of got the doors blown off of them tonight in this one, losing 5-1. They're 0-2-1 in their last 3 games, and they have been outscored by 9 goals in their last 2 games. The big story out of this one, Tampa Bay's Braden Point scores his 11th of the season on the power play in the second period, and he gets hurt on the play, didn't look good, had to be helped off. The question now will be, can he continue for Tampa? Can he continue for Team Canada? He had started kind of rough this year. He had been playing a lot better lately.
Team Canada might be more concerned than Tampa because Tampa has, months left in the season. Team Canada, we're about what, 3 weeks away, something like that.
We're close. Yeah.
We're close. That if you need 2 weeks to rest up, you're not really going to be ready to go for the Olympics at this point. So they're wincing at anybody getting hurt at this point now in mid-January. And the Flyers, for me, I've been saying it on every show I've been on everywhere. I don't buy the Flyers. I've never bought the Flyers. I do think they are one of those teams that could drop out of the race this year. After the Olympics, we'll really see what they're made of. I don't think they're that good. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team. I do think that if Toronto gets in, if Detroit stays where they are, if the Penguins somehow fight their way in, certainly if the Rangers would get in, then you're going to have teams like the Flyers drop out. That's just going to happen. And Tampa Bay looks like they could be a juggernaut again. Looks like they're building to that, especially when they score in the power play. Now that they're dealing with an injury, we'll see what happens to them in the future, though.
I buy Tocchet. I don't buy the Flyers roster.
That's fair. We'll see how long they give him in terms of time, though. They are a franchise that has a quick trigger. In hockey, teams do, but certainly the Flyers. So I don't buy them. I don't buy the roster. I don't buy them for this year. And I don't even know if I buy them any different than this next year, unless something really changes.
I think being the legend that he is, I think that he's got some room, being a Philly legend as well.
Yeah, I'm not saying he's fired tomorrow, but we'll see how many years they give him, because I do think this is a multiple year journey to really be a contender.
Right.
Squeeze in.
The big story with them. Now, again, listen, Trevor Zegras could change all of this. When he's been good, Philadelphia's been really good. The big story for Philadelphia has been they didn't walk out of their rebuild with any premium prospects. They walked out with a lot of wingers, but nobody at center, nobody on defense, nobody in goal.
Nobody to build around. Nobody to have him be the guy that you then build around. There's no star there that's even in the making. There's no Celebrini there to say, okay, we're middle of the water right now, but we have a guy to build around who's going to be a star and going to give us a certain level at minimum for years to come. They don't have that guy, which is why I'm not buying them for this or next year, unless something changes. I don't have their cap space in front of me, but they are a franchise that I'm sure is going to have a sense of urgency. They're not trying to rebuild anymore. They want to win now. So if they would miss this year in the offseason, certainly look for them to make some moves. But if they don't, then I don't see them going anywhere.
I still think Zegras has another level he would have to get to for us to be more confident in Philly. All right, final game.
Are they buyers of the deadline? Are they buyers of the deadline? Yes or no?
I think they kind of have to be at this point, unless they go through a really big collapse. I think they have to be. Edmonton picks up a 4-1 win over Chicago. The Oilers kind of
perpetual buyers.
This one.
Perpetual buyers.
And listen, a good win for the Oilers. Anytime you get a win with Connor Ingram starting, you're happy.
Sure.
And the Oilers 100%. Have righted the ship at this point. 2-goal night for Evan Bouchard. Leon Draisaitl scored another. And one quick note on Chicago: Tyler Bertuzzi continues his fantastic season. He scored the lone goal for the Blackhawks. 24 goals for him. While Connor Bedard has been out, Bertuzzi has almost single-handedly kept the Hawks afloat.
And that's kind of good for the future of their franchise. Unlike Philadelphia, they do have stars to build around. They have seen those stars play critical games, and they're getting production from those stars. So they're not a contender now, but they have a bright future. And Edmonton, obviously the time is now. McDavid also had a couple points in this game, as he's still been red hot points-wise. It's all about the playoffs. It's all about finally lifting the cup, but they look very, very good again. They look like they can beat anybody. Their offense is clicking on all cylinders, and when it is, they can beat anybody as long as they get enough in net, which is usually enough until maybe they get to the cup final against Florida. We'll see if they get back who they will meet there. Florida's there again, but a little different situation in net this year than in recent years. And they got enough from Ingram, and then the offense kept it moving from what they've been doing the past 30-some games, especially McDavid.
Thanks for tuning in, folks. That'll do it for us on Locked On NHL Game Night. We'll be back tomorrow night. If you want to talk puck with us, I'm on social media as The Radio Spiel. He is at Mike Osti 11. If you want complete coverage of your favorite NHL team, good news. There is a Locked On NHL Team pod and YouTube show for you because we have one for every NHL team. This show, Locked On NHL Game Night, is here for you each and every night of the regular season and playoffs, wrapping up the night in the NHL. We have a 5-man crew. It's me, Mike, TJ, Eddie, and Shu, and you will find at least one of us and likely two of us every night of the week. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this show if you're watching on YouTube and you enjoy it. We want to see your thoughts on tonight's games in the comments section. Anything that we might have missed. I don't know what you guys thought about that winning goal for Andrew Copp, but I would love to hear what the Carolina fans think about that goal. That'll do it for this episode of Locked On NHL Game Night. For Mike Osti, I'm Alex Wiederspiel. Thanks for listening and for watching Locked On NHL Game Night, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.